So it was 1996 or 1997, and I had just finished 5th or 6th grade. It was summer break and I was home alone. My mom and brother were both at work. My dad lived a few blocks from my mom's place, and he had the day off, so I was going to bike over there in the early afternoon. I headed over around 2 p.m. The neighborhood was dead. It was the middle of the day and the middle of the week. Everyone was at work. I don't know why, but it was one of those neighborhoods that just didn't have many kids. I rode my bike for about a block, and I can't remember why, but for some reason I got off my bike and decided to just walk it instead. As I was walking, a station wagon came up from behind me, seemingly out of nowhere, and then drove slowly alongside me for maybe 20 seconds when the driver, an older guy with a gray beard, rolled down the window and asked if I could tell him where the New York Drive was. I stopped. And he stopped. And I said, pointing north, "It's right there, like a block away." He said, "Could you please show me on this map?" and held up a folded up map. I said again, a little annoyed at this point, "No, it's right there." I started walking again and he continued to creep alongside me. "I really need your help," he said. "Just show me on this map where New York Drive is." I glared at him, and then noticed that his windows were really darkly tinted, except for one of the back ones which had tinfoil in it. The whole encounter creeped me out, but the window is what really scared me for some reason. I jumped on my bike and hauled ass towards my dad's house. The station wagon continued to follow me slowly. As I approached my dad's house, I saw my dad's car wasn't there, and I didn't have my key. I thought about going back to my mom's, but I didn't want the guy to know where I lived, so I decided to bike to a small nearby park that the city didn't maintain at all. Nobody spent any time there, and there was tons of overgrown grass and bushes and so on. I biked as fast as I could. I rode my bike into the park, straight into a bunch of really tall grass and weeds, and I dumped it. Then I ran, kind of crouching down so the grass would cover me, across the park to the baseball diamond, which was lined by two sides of tall overgrown bushes. The baseball diamond was butted up pretty close to the street, on a corner, so I could see the street from behind the bushes very clearly. I sat in those bushes for what felt like an eternity. I watched the station wagon slowly circle the park over and over. He seemed to pass by every 3 or 4 minutes. Finally, someone in a sedan drove by at a normal speed. Apart from the creepy guy, this was literally the only person I'd seen since I left my mom's house. After the sedan drove by, I sat in those bushes maybe another 10 through 15 minutes, and the station wagon hadn't gone by again. I think the sedan scared him off. I ran back to my bike and rode to my dad's house. I didn't see the station wagon anywhere during my ride. My dad's car was in the driveway, and man, was I so relieved. I walked in the house and my dad was like, "Where have you been?" I looked at the clock and it was about 3:15. I'd been hiding out in that park for probably 40 through 50 minutes. That guy was definitely on the prowl. In retrospect, I don't understand why he asked me to tell him where New York Drive was, when it was literally the next street up. If he'd asked for a street several blocks away, I wonder if I would have fallen for his act and been more helpful. When I was young, from the ages 2 to 10, I lived on a 7-acre ranch. There was a small house in the front of the property, a huge grass yard and a cabinet shop behind it, and an orchard in the very back full of walnut trees. My father was a carpenter that always worked in the shop, and my mother was a school teacher that was almost always busy. Because of their jobs and the fact that they were new to parenting, as I got older they really didn't pay as much attention to me as they should to where I would wander off. I would spend my days roaming around the yard, playing in the dirt, and running through the walnut trees. I obviously didn't question my lack of supervision, as it was fun to explore this huge plot of land, and I thought I was just being a normal kid. When I was about 7 years old, my father surprised me with a brand new child-sized ATV. It wasn't one of those electric ones that you're probably picturing either. It was a damn fast gas-powered quad/4-wheeler. Now, at this point, a good amount of you are probably questioning why someone would give a gas-powered ATV to a 7-year-old child. But like I said, my parents were a bit reckless, and my dad, just wanted me to have fun. Pretty much right after I got the thing, I learned how to ride it by myself, and started to go farther into and past the property than I ever had before. I now had a free ride to basically as far as my young mind self would let me go before turning back. I started riding through the orchards, behind my house almost every day, and I loved it more than I had loved anything before. I would leave my house and be gone for hours. After a while, I gradually started roaming farther and farther away from my house as I became brazen and a little older. I would ride down this dirt path that leads past what I assumed was our neighbor's land, and a ditch that held water. At the time, I just liked looking at the water as it flowed, and I felt like I was a little explorer. I honestly never contemplated that what I was doing could be the least bit dangerous, and I really don't think my parents knew how far I was riding. When I think back on it now, just the idea of riding a pretty dangerous piece of equipment far away from my house, without my parents knowing where I was, and before cell phones existed, is pretty scary in itself, as I could have crashed or hit my head, and no one would have been able to find me. However, luckily this never happened, and is not what this story is about. One day, like every other day, I was riding far away from my house and I passed a man wearing a dirty white shirt, denim jeans, and a wicker farmer's hat. I remember it vividly as it had been the first person I had seen in all of my time I had been out there. I remembered the surprised look in his eyes as he stared at me while I rode past him. I had no reason to stop, and my parents had always taught me about stranger danger, so I kept going and forgot about it. On the way home a couple of hours later, I was going up the same spot and it dawned on me that this is where I had seen the man. I looked ahead not expecting him to be there. As I said, it had been hours. Yet as the trees parted, there he was. I really didn't think it was too weird because I figured he was either a farmer or a homebody, so I kept driving, coming closer to where he was. He seemed friendly, to be honest. He had a big smile on his face like he was happy to see me. To my 10-year-old self, I just thought he was a friendly guy, so I waved at him as I passed by, and he waved back. I continued on my way and drove home not thinking much about it. I don't really remember how much time had passed between then and the next time I went riding, but it couldn't have been more than a couple of days. Like usual, I took the same dirt road, past the same few orchards, to the same ditch full of water. I didn't think much about my previous encounter, so I hadn't been thinking about the stranger with the big smile. I was sitting on the edge of the ditch when I heard footsteps in the dirt coming up from behind me. Again, I remember this vividly, because it was not a common occurrence to see anyone on this trail. I remember being more cautious than scared, and turned around to see the same stranger with the smile. This time his smile seemed to be more of a toothy grin. He called out to me as he walked up asking what my name was in a heavy southern drawl. I told him with confidence that I wasn't really allowed to talk to strangers, to which he said, "That's a good idea, although you really shouldn't be out here all by yourself. It could be dangerous for a kid your age." I remember this striking me in the gut with a little bit of a butterfly feeling. I wasn't afraid, but I felt uneasy. This piqued my curiosity, however, as I wondered what he meant, so I asked him. He continued to walk closer to me slowly and answered, "I heard they found a little boy out here, just around your age. I think it was that ditch right there where he drowned." I would like to point out here that although my parents were reckless, they were not stupid. If there had been a drowning near our house that was reported, or there had been a story in the paper, they definitely wouldn't have let me out anymore. Anyway, he continued, "Why don't you come with me and I'll take you back to your parents? It's not safe out here for a kid your age." It's okay, I have my quad right here. I'll just ride back." I pointed over to the side of him where my quad was, but he didn't look. His eyes remained fixed on me. They were deep brown, almost black, and piercing into me. At this point I was scared, and I knew that this could be a bad situation. I was hoping that he was just a concerned old man, but there was no way I was going with him anywhere. I got to my feet and started walking to my quad, to which the man said, "Should a kid your age be riding something that dangerous? Let's just put that in my truck and I'll give you a ride back." "I don't see a truck," I said, looking around, hoping to talk my way out of this situation. "Oh, it's right over there on my property. You can't see it from here," he said, his smile widening. "It's really okay. I'll just go now," I said, starting again to walk to my quad. But as I passed him, he reached and grabbed my arm. "You really shouldn't be out here," he said while staring deep in my eyes. "It's not safe for little kids." "Let me go, you're hurting me," I shouted, starting to panic. But this only made him grip tighter. "Maybe you don't deserve to go back home. What kind of parents would let their kid out here all alone? Maybe you should come home with me and I'll take care of you." Now I was about to pee my pants. I was freaking out, and I started to scream. I don't know if I was saying anything. I just know I was screaming as loud as I ever had before. This only seemed to anger him, as his once toothy grin turned to a face of anger. He put his hand over my face, and I took this opportunity to bite his finger as hard as I could. I still remember the taste of blood, so I know I hurt him pretty bad. Thankfully, this caught him off guard and he finally let me go. I knew this was my one chance to get away from this weirdo, so I booked it to my quad as he winced in pain. "You little shit! Get the hell over here!" he cried in anger. I knew I didn't have much time, so I jumped on my quad and turned the key as fast as I could. It started up, and just as I pulled the gas handle, I felt a hand start to grab my neck. Luckily, he didn't have a grip yet as I was already starting to drive away. I punched it and noped the hell out of there. At this point, all I could hear was the sound of my quad, so I wasn't quite sure if he was running after me. But I wasn't going to look, because I could possibly crash and be SOL. I drove down that dirt path as fast as my quad would go, probably the fastest I had ever driven it. When I got home, I peeled out into the dirt and ran into my house, hoping to God my mom was home. I burst into her room bawling, and there she was. She asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't talk yet as I was so afraid. I just kept bawling. I think I cried for a good 30 minutes before I could summon up the strength to stop and tell her what happened. I remember the fear in her eyes as I described what happened. She pulled me close to her and hugged me as hard as she ever had. The next day I talked to a police officer and recounted the story of what transpired. I honestly don't remember much after this as I think I started to block it out. It's not really something a 10-year-old wants to think about. Needless to say, they never let me off the property again. My dad started drinking and we lost the house soon after this anyway, so I didn't have to live there much longer. Recently I was thinking about that day, after I started trying to remember various parts of my childhood. My parents had never told me what had happened after the cops were called, and I never really asked because I tried to not think about it. So yesterday I went to her house and asked her if they ever found the guy, considering he used to live pretty close to our property. She was kind of startled by the question, because we hadn't talked about it in 15 years. She paused for a minute, as if pondering whether to tell me, then said, "We didn't have any neighbors out that way. It was all corporate-owned land and the description you gave didn't match any of the neighbors in the other direction. We called the cops and they went to search where you told us you were, but the guy was long gone by the time they got there. They looked around the property and found an abandoned house that hadn't been used in years, since the land was purchased. When they looked inside, they could tell that he had been staying there. Apparently, he left his stuff behind. We never told you this because you were too young, but one of the things they found was a black grocery bag. It had a roll of duct tape and a hunting knife inside. Thanks, Mom, but I really didn't need to know that." If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and hit the notifications tab and make sure it says send you notifications for anything I do. That way it will also notify you whenever I go live so you don't miss it. And if you would like to help support the channel, make sure you click that sponsor button down by that there subscribe button. I'm telling y'all right here, right now, you'll get some cool stuff out of it, and one of them being a sponsor badge. Another thing being early access. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Early access to my content. Be one of those first people to leave that there on comment. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, you also get these cool little custom on and custom emotes when I go live. Yeah, when I go live. And that way it works intertwined with the notifications y'all might get. How many people are pissed off by me talking like that? Deal with it. Seriously though, I really appreciate you checking out this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear some stories that I wrote, I will have them on the screen. Those were inspired by a series that Crypt TV has called The Sunny Family Cult, and I think they came out pretty well. So if you're new to the channel or you haven't heard them, I highly recommend you check them out. And I will catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. Bad bye. Get the hell over here. Yeah. Sounds like that one chicken. What was that chicken? From Looney Tunes. That chicken. The big cockatiel. The big old rooster. What was his name? Rooster Man. Rooster Man. Yeah, Rooster Man. I say it, boy. What was he? I don't remember. Catch you on that there on next video.